Hey guys, JP back for another world tour video, and today we're exploring Hanoi. In this video we're going to be explaining our activities, kind of going over our costs and itemizing everything from a budget perspective. And so stick around and I'll go over all of that. But this is Hanoi. We were greeted with a ton of traffic. The preferred method of travel around here is by scooter, and there is no lights. If there are lights, you're actually really lucky, but I don't think anybody follows the rules anyway. But scooter is the main means of travel around here. We started our journey by doing a little food tour. This is one of those recommended places for banh mi's. It was pretty good, not bad. First activity we did here was the night market. Now, this night market operates only on the weekends, and it's basically closing off a certain section of the entire town. Hanoi is one of those places where it's extremely busy and full of people, but this night market is nice. You're able to haggle with everybody in terms of all of these products. They did have a lot of counterfeit goods, and they also had street food. Now, a warning on the street food. My wife mentioned that she did see somebody cooking a rat, so just be warned. I would not suggest it unless you're really adventurous. This night market leads to the Hon Kiam Lake, which is the central portion of Hanoi. And it is nice because they close off the streets that surround this park during the weekends, which can get very congested throughout the day. This is an image of how the lake looks during the day. We continued our food journey here by going to a cafe called Cafe Din, which sold egg coffee. Now, egg coffee is interesting. Egg coffee is basically Vietnam's specialty here. It basically mixes condensed milk with egg yolk and whipped it up on top of a little espresso. And it's actually quite tasty. Cafe Din is probably one of the better well-known areas that sell egg coffee. Initially, egg coffee was intended to be a supplement or a replacement for regular milk when there was a shortage in Vietnam. This is another spot. This is called the Note Cafe, and it's one of those Instagram places where you can leave a note for the next person. They did have egg coffee here as well, but it's all kind of overpriced. This was my wife's contribution, and you could see all of the notes all over the place. Colombia made it over here, and so it's a pretty neat spot. You could spend hours here just reading all of the notes. And this is our coffee here, but there are a ton of coffee places around this place, and egg coffee is their specialty. This is just one of those locations that happen to be in one of the touristy areas. If you get a chance to try the egg coffee, like I said, it is quite tasty, and I think you'll enjoy it. But this is us kind of just exploring the lake. Here you have the Opera House, and you can also see that there is a church. This is, I believe, a monastery. And so we just took our afternoon stroll around this park, which is a beautiful park. Lots of flowers, lots of people taking photographs. And so it's a very calm and relaxing respite from all of that is Hanoi. And believe me when I tell you, Hanoi is a lot. I wasn't quite sure what to expect from Hanoi, but it definitely met my expectations as being a crazy capital, and it certainly was very eye-opening. This is our next stop on our food tour. This is called the Coffee Club, and this was a spot, again, right by the lake. It was just a nice little area. A lot of tours come through here with prefixed menus, and so we just stopped here because it was a bit hot, wanted to get something refreshing, and so we got some drinks, got some desserts, and enjoyed all of the food that this place had to offer. Vietnam is really a foodie's paradise. There is a lot of cheap, delicious food that you could purchase on the street, but like I said, be careful. Our next stop here is St. Joseph's Cathedral. This is a Catholic cathedral, and it's known for its neo-Gothic architecture. You could see this lit up at night, and they were holding Mass at this time. Let me talk a little bit more about the food. I believe that food is the greatest ambassador to a country. And it introduces foreigners to the culture of a country, and so that's what generated all of our interest in even going to Vietnam. But this was another place that served one of the best pho's. This is supposedly a Michelin star restaurant, and that bowl of pho you saw there was $3, and that's it. It was delicious. Our next stop here was Train Street. Train Street is relatively new in terms of these touristy areas in Vietnam. It started because there was a photo taken somewhere along the way where there were just these people everywhere going about their business and daily living, when this massive train just kind of drove right across and nobody flinched. It was kind of one of those iconic photos, and so a lot of tourists gravitate here. Believe it or not, Train Street is now considered an illegal thing for tourists. They actually discourage tourists from going here. You saw me putting there a beer cap on the track here, and this is the train coming. This is basically an instant souvenir for anybody interested. You can see how close this train gets, and it really was pretty close. My shoulder is literally inches away from the side of this train, and so it was quite interesting in terms of an experience. I'd never been through anything like that, but tourists have actually gotten hurt in the past, and so that's why they have discouraged tourists from coming here. But you could see all of these businesses around the area still quite thriving on the tourist money that flows through here. And so despite the fact that this is generally considered a frowned upon activity or illegal, people still do it, and this is my instant souvenir. The next stop here is the Temple of Literature. The Temple of Literature was actually the very first university in all of Vietnam, and it was actually a Confucius type of university. We didn't spend much time there, but here we are continuing our food tour with crepes. We had extra time in Vietnam, so we spent the next day in Ninh Binh. Now, Ninh Binh is considered the Halong Bay of land because of all of these limestone formations around the area. Now, on this tour, we had our choice of selecting either the Tam Coc River or the Trang An River. We decided to take the Trang An River, which is where they filmed portions of King Kong Skull Island, and you'll see that later in the video. If you haven't already, please hit that like button. It does help with promoting the video, and I would certainly appreciate it. But on this trip, we decided to take the Trang An River, which we will see later on, and I will mention the differences between the Tam Coc and the Trang An River. But this was our start to the day. We took a bike ride over to the very first capital of Vietnam. According to history, the first capital of Vietnam was this location here called Hoa Lu, and this is where the first 3 kings of Vietnam resided. Essentially, the limestone cliffs around this area provided a lot of protection against foreigners and invaders. And so this was initially the original capital of Vietnam, where the first 3 emperors or kings basically resided. The 3rd king decided to move the capital to Hanoi as the population began to really thrive and grow. Now, the first 3 kings are still buried in this location. There are little shrines located throughout this little land, and this is actually us going to the first shrine for that very first king that essentially started the whole thing. And there is some tradition here in terms of these ponds and lakes. You could see that one pond is empty and the other pond is full of koi fish. And that's how they kind of came up with the idea of the dragon. Apparently the dragon was a fish that jumped out of the water and became a dragon, which is why the dragon has scales just like fish. But again, here's a better view of that lake, and there's the koi fish on the other side. So the koi fish would jump from pond to pond, and in the process of doing so, some would turn into dragons. This is the temple for the 2nd king. His temple wasn't quite as big as the first king, but the concept and principles are still the same, and you can see all of these koi fish in one of the ponds there. And this is the entryway where the peasants would go. Essentially, that little gate that you see in the background there was for the peasants to pass through, and it was only the king that was allowed to pass through the center of that gate. Moving on here, we rode our bikes down the street here, and we had some lunch that was provided by the tour. It was a buffet style lunch, which was nice, and from there we went over to the Trang An River. Now, the differences between the Trang An and the Tam Kok River are quite distinct. What you'll see with the Tam Kok River is basically a lot of lotus flowers, and those lotus flowers can be quite beautiful, especially during this season. A lot of the flowers are blooming, but with the Trang An River, it doesn't have any lotus flowers, but it does have this very intricate cave system, which you will see here in a bit. And it is also quite a peaceful ride. So we decided to take this Trang An River, and this is the first of those many cave systems in the area. In addition to the cave system here, the filming of King Kong Skull Island also took place in this area, so you'll see a lot of different limestone formations here that were used in the movies, and so that was also an attraction here in terms of why this was such an appealing ride. And like I mentioned, these cave systems are really impressive. These caves can vary in length, and the longer the cave, usually the more intricate the pathway. I don't really think that these are natural cave systems. I do see that they excavated quite a bit here to make it a little bit more passable with regards to these little riverboats. As you can see, these openings are kind of square shaped, so I doubt that this is all natural. But still, this is very much an impressive set of caves, and I'm sure that there is an element here of it being natural to some degree. But it's also quite an attractive area in terms of just how visually appealing it is to the eye. And they also built a few different structures in the area to kind of complement the natural landscape here. You will see here later on a small pagoda in the middle of the river, and here it is. And this is one of those photo opportunities for a lot of the tourists that pay to see the Trang An River. And so, it's quite a lovely afternoon to spend just having this cave system. The woman that was rowing the boat for us, she was amazing. I couldn't believe how much rowing she did, and there were 5 of us in total inside this boat, and so it was a hot day, and she was rowing and rowing and rowing, so it was quite an impressive feat. Her jacket had some fans attached to it because of the heat, but after a certain point I felt bad, and I actually started rowing to help her out in terms of going about this cave system, because this ride was about 2 hours in total length, and so the woman was rowing for 2 hours straight, which is pretty amazing. If you do decide to take this trip instead of the Tam Kok, please tip your driver or your rower, because they do work hard for their money, and believe me when I tell you that it's not an easy thing. I got tired rowing, and I was just helping her. So that said, don't forget to tip. But this was just a nice, peaceful way to end this trip here in Vietnam. And you can see how beautiful these limestone cliffs are. It's certainly worth a visit. In total, we paid for this entire tour about $100, which was not bad. The next stop here was this Mua Cave Peak, and we basically climbed all the way to the top of this mountain to get the best views of this area of Ninh Binh. At the top, you'll see some pagodas that a lot of people really kind of enjoy looking at, and you'll also see another one of those dragons at the very peak of this mountain. But you can see how beautiful this is. You'll also get an amazing view of the Tam Kok River, so even though you didn't get to ride along the Tam Kok River, you'll get a peek at it at the very top of this mountain. So it was quite a trip, and it was very, very enjoyable. And this is the Tam Kok River you can see here. But this is that dragon at the very top of this mountain, and you get this beautiful view of the Min Bin. While you take this in, let me talk about the cost breakdown. And so we paid $166 for the lodging that we spent in Hanoi. Our transportation costs were about $308. Food-wise, we spent $162 on all of our little food trips here, and it was totally worth it. And miscellaneous costs were about $261, leaving a grand total of $897, and that breaks down to a per day average of about $150, which is really, really amazing. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed. Our next stop here on our world tour is going to be Cambodia. If you haven't, please like and subscribe. Thanks.